time for Comeback Sports with Brandon, the Coach Perry, and Pat, the Shot Caller Flaherty. Here we go.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Comeback Sports. We give you 10 sports topics on this show. We discuss them throughout the show with all the recent sports things that are going on in both America and across the globe. As you'll see today, we got some international topics to talk about as well. I'm Pat, the Shot Caller Flaherty. I'm joined as always by my partner, Brandon, the Coach Perry. Brandon, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good. Hey, shout out to our new subscribers, Brent Gustafson, and who's the other guy here we got? Want to get him in here? James Curtis. James Curtis. Shout out to you guys. Time to jump on the train. Good time to jump on.
Yeah, number 29, number 30 subscribers. Great to see those guys. We appreciate you guys participating in our subscription and our shows. And the more people we can get watching this show, the better. And it's great to see people subscribe. We really appreciate the support. And folks, if you want to follow us on social media, there is where our Twitter handles are. We always tweet the links to all the shows out, as well as some of the other things that we'll be commenting on. So make sure, if you like what you hear, you subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on Twitter. So topic number one, it's a big topic here in New England and a huge topic in the NFL. The San Francisco 49ers traded up from their number 12 pick in the first round of the draft to number 3 with the Miami Dolphins to get to the number 3 pick in the draft. And obviously, 49ers are probably looking for a quarterback. I think it's 99.99999% that they're going to draft a quarterback number 3. So, Brennan, what are the 49ers up to? What are they thinking?
First off, I think your probability is right. It's right on point there, because, I mean, my phone lit up immediately. And it was basically with people saying, like, what quarterback are they going after? Is it going to be Justin Fields? Is it going to be Wilson? Like, who is it? And what I've been hearing is that Justin Fields is high on their board. And, I mean, if you look at his pro day the other day, he was making some unbelievable throws, short throws, mid throws, and some amazing throws down the field. Plus, the guy runs a 4.4 40 in his pro day. I mean, that's flying. I was a 4.6 guy myself at one point, and I thought that was flying. But this guy is 4.4, and he's a Division I quarterback and throw the ball a mile. I mean, to be honest, it wouldn't shock me with their style of offense and that West Coast style of offense. Justin Fields, I think, would be a great fit. And with the coaching that he's going to get out there in San Francisco, I think it would also be a great fit. And it could be, like I said, it could be time. If they do draft a quarterback, that means Jimmy G is going to be on the move there. And, I mean, there's no doubt about it that if they draft a quarterback, they will have to move Jimmy Garoppolo. He'll be making too much money, first off, and so it just doesn't make sense for a roster aspect. And then, honestly, it just doesn't make sense for a locker room aspect, because you now have 2 quarterbacks that are definitely going to want to start. Jimmy G is not going to hold back in the fight. And then you're obviously drafting a young quarterback with basically your number 1 pick, which we all know, whether you like it or not, when you draft a quarterback with your number 1 pick, you have to invest time and effort into him, and you have to just let it play out, and you have to play him. It's one of those things. You have to play him because you're investing so much money into him no matter what. And for the viewers that don't know, when you're a number 1 pick or a first-round draft pick, you have a lot of guaranteed money that's built into your contract, and we're talking about millions of dollars. So I know that they're going to want to get a return on that, and so look for them to draft a quarterback. This is the sign when you move up this far and you give up that much to move up in the draft, it's to get a franchise player, and the quarterback is number 1.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if it's a guarantee that they're going to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. And, you know, the thing is, if you pick a quarterback 3rd, you obviously think that that's your guy of the future and even possibly of the present, like you mentioned, and you want to play that guy. You're giving him a lot of money for a rookie. But the problem is, if that quarterback's not ready at the start of the season, you know, if you hang on to Garoppolo plays, and Garoppolo's got 2 years left on his deal. It looked like a monster deal when he first signed it, but he's making, I think it's like a $25 million cap hit this year and next year, or right around $25 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but for quarterbacks in the NFL, it's not that bad. So, you know, you look at it that way. If you draft a guy, and first and foremost, if he's not ready, you don't have to play him right away. You can maybe wait mid-season or even let him sit for a year like Mahomes did, like a few other quarterbacks have done. Or there's a chance you draft a guy 3 and you find out he's not the guy. I mean, it's happened. You know, you get some guys who get in there and they can't do it. As soon as they get into the NFL, it's a completely different ball game. I think if they take Justin Fields, then I think he's going to definitely be a stud. But you just never know. So I don't know if the 49ers are definitely going to trade him. I think if they do trade him, we'll probably talk about who they could trade him to in a sec. But if they do trade him, they might pick up somebody like Gardner Minshew or some NFL veteran who might be a little cheap, who could start the season and then also help guide the next guy along, whether that's Justin Fields, Trey Lance, or some people have said that 49ers really like Mac Jones at 3, which I don't understand. I don't know why you would take him there if you can get Justin Fields, but that's been the talk. But now the question is, do the Patriots try to trade for Jimmy G? You know, I don't think I'd give up a first-round pick, but I would trade for him, and I would try to, you know, you might have to, if you're looking to get rid of, or not get rid of, but if you're looking to possibly trade Stephon Gilmore, you could trade Gilmore to the 49ers with a year left on his deal, and then you could send a pick with him too. You get back Jimmy G. You clear because the other thing is the Pats need to clear a little bit of cap space to absorb Jimmy G. We'll see. We'll see what kind of moves. The Pats are going to have to make some corresponding moves to make room on the cap in order to bring Jimmy G in. So some folks are saying he's not coming to the Patriots and they don't want him. And then other folks are saying he absolutely should be the number 1 goal for quarterback in New England. So I think it's interesting. Plus his familiarity with the system. You got a bunch of new guys. He can kind of teach them the system. It's an interesting dynamic. I would give him up the number 15 pick, but anything after that, I do it for Jimmy G.
Yeah, no, interesting point of view there. And I think here's the thing. I don't think Jimmy G wants to help develop a quarterback. I mean, he's a young man still himself. He's only 30 years old, I believe. So especially in quarterback terms, that's young. So he wants to play. So he definitely doesn't want to help develop a quarterback. So if they draft a quarterback, he's going to want out of town no matter what. So I think that if they do draft a quarterback, they will trade him. It's just to who. And, you know, obviously they're going to try to dangle him out to the Patriots, but are the Patriots willing to give up what they want? And I guess is the price right? You know, I would get him, and this is where I'm going to split my views here, and people are probably going to hammer me on it because I'm splitting my view. But if the price is right, I would get him. But if the price is not right, like you said, if they want a higher pick, I wouldn't do it. I would ride it out with Cam Newton and Jarrett Stidham and just kind of see what happens with my new weapons. I would, like I said, I've been saying for I want to say years now, but it's months on this show that they need to draft an offensive weapon with that number 1 pick they have. And to be honest, if they're going to trade Gilmore, I need them to trade it for Odell Beckham. Needs to be Gilmore for Odell Beckham Jr. I think that would be a better trade for the Patriots than a Gilmore for Jimmy Garoppolo, unless, like you said, it's mixed in there with maybe a draft pick, and it's definitely to clear some cap space. But like you said, he's got a pretty big cap hit in that $25 million. Not for a quarterback, it's not a big hit, but for the roster itself, that's a big hit. So it's one of those things where I don't, you know, the Patriots fans, some of them want to see him come back, and then other ones are like, if the price is right, and I'm probably leaning on that side. If the price is right, if it's like maybe a couple 3rd-round picks or something like that, I'd be willing to do it. But anything more than that, I don't think I'd be willing to do it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You know, if he wasn't a former Patriot, I think we probably wouldn't even be talking about this right now because he's been sort of average. Now, he did bring a team to the Super Bowl, you know, and Kyle Shanahan's offense, everybody keeps saying, you know, it makes quarterbacks look really good. He's had loaded talent around him with George Kittle and Deebo Samuel, and now he's got Brandon Ayuk, and he's got all these guys that are top-tier players at their positions. So, you know, you could kind of say, you know, is it the talent and the coaching, or is Jimmy G a really solid quarterback? Or, yeah, is he just really solid? You could bring him in and he can perform on the Pats offense too with good talent around him. The other question too with Jimmy G is he can't stay on the field. He's really only played 1 full season. Now, it was that year they won the Super Bowl, but that's the only year he started 16 games. So you have to kind of take that into effect as well. You trade a bunch of assets or picks rather, or even Gilmore, and then you get back Jimmy G, and then he gets hurt midway through the season, you know, then you're looking at, you know, sort of a loss there. So I also think it matters too if the Pats trade up in the draft for a quarterback. If they go up to 4, after the 49ers take a quarterback at 3, if they go to 4, say they get Trey Lance, or say, Lance drops out of the top 4 and goes to 5, and the Pats get traded with Cincinnati, who's definitely not going to take a quarterback, and they get Lance there, then I don't think you're going to go after Jimmy Garoppolo, because you have Cam Newton, who's the placeholder, and then you have the guy coming in behind him, and it kind of works perfectly. Cam's here for a year. He's got a 1-year deal, and then you bring the first-round quarterback in. It's kind of a seamless transition. So I don't see them going to get Jimmy Garoppolo if they trade up in the draft. If they don't trade up, then that might be what they're going to do. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Garoppolo. And again, there's so many moving pieces to all these quarterbacks that are happening right now, with Sam Darnold still a possibility of being traded. And Deshaun Watson, we're not going to get into that today because we've talked about him a lot. I'm sure we will in the future. But he's, his situation's kind of muddy in the waters with the quarterbacks in the NFL as well.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think, to your point, we're only talking about Jimmy G because he was a former Patriot, played so well in our system that we could see him coming back and doing the same again very easily, and just mashing into this Josh McDaniels offense. But just quickly before we move on to the next topic, I want to say I don't know what the big deal is. People love Trey Lance, and I get it. I think he is a good player, but I have to spend a second-round pick or a third-round pick on Trey Lance. I don't believe Trey Lance is a first-round pick. I think the NFL is quarterback hungry and quarterback needy, and they need a quarterback, and so many people need a quarterback that you probably will see him drafted in the first round. However, I don't believe he's a first-round talent. I'd rather have Wilson from BYU or Justin Fields. But moving on to the Dolphins, and they moved around some picks. They moved back. They moved up. I know you're going to have the exacts on that, but what do you think about them moving around and shuffling around?
Right, so we just talked about San Francisco getting the number 3 pick. The Dolphins moved back to 12, which was San Francisco's original pick. In that trade, they also picked up, I believe, a 5th-round pick from San Francisco to move back. And in addition to that, they also got, this is already complicated. They have the 12th-round pick this year, 12th pick overall this year in the first round, 2022 first-round pick, and a second-round pick in 2022, so that's next year, and then a first-round pick in 2023. So they got 3 first-rounders and a second-rounder over the next 3 years for just moving back to 12. Then what Miami did is they sent 12 to Philly, and then Miami also sent their first-round pick, I believe, in 2022 to get back to 6, and then they got a 5th back. So they still have, 2 first-round picks this year, another first-round pick next year, second-rounders galore. Miami's doing a hell of a job. Their front office and Brian Flores, the head coach, are doing a great job. Just, they're still kind of making out from that Laramie Tunsil trade that Miami made a few years ago to Houston. They're still reaping the benefits of that trade, which is crazy. So Miami's got all these picks. If Tua is their guy and he turns out to be, the quarterback that they thought he was when they took him 5th, and then you got all these picks, they are going to be loaded for years to come, whether they use it to trade for somebody or they use it and just keep drafting players in the first round. They're going to surround Tua with talent. Their defense is already good. They're probably going to draft more guys. Miami's future is set up well for the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, funny quick story on Twitter the other day. Darius Butler, former Patriots cornerback, shout out to Darius Butler. I follow him on Twitter. He shared a picture of a statue of a fake Laramie Tunsil statue in front of the Miami Dolphins stadium. And on the bottom of the statue, it said 3 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a couple of fourth-round picks. Man, they got a haul for that guy, and it's going to pay off in the years to come. And honestly, Laramie Tunsil is arguably not worth the first-round pick that was spent on him. So I think that they definitely made out in that deal, and they're just stacking more picks. And I think, like you said, this is Brian Flores doing it the Patriot way, in my opinion. He learned from Bill Belichick how to stack picks and how to move back and then even move back up again and get more picks and more value for your draft picks, which we've talked about many times on this show. A draft pick is basically like a scratch ticket or going to the casino. It's not a guaranteed win that it's going to happen. And I don't even know what to say if it's a 50-50 if they're going to pan out, especially when you're talking about first-round picks or second-round picks. So it's one of those things where, and obviously like one of the greatest players of all time was a 7th round pick. So, and we all know who we're talking about. So it's one of those things where you don't know what you're going to get. So moving back and getting additional picks to make more picks is really like stacking your hand and having a better hand in poker at the casino to be able to actually stack the odds in your favor to be able to hit. And so that's what I think Brian Flores is doing. I think he's doing a good job. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if you've seen the Patriots do that, if they're just fielding offers for this 15th pick to actually be able to move back like they normally do. But I really would like them to make the pick or to move up. But I honestly would bet everything I have in my pocket right now, which is actually nothing because I have 0 in my pocket. But if I did have some money, I'd bet it all that they would never trade up in this draft. But if they would trade back. But I'd like them to just kind of stay where they are and make that 15th pick. But yeah, the Dolphins, they're stacking picks. And they honestly, they got a lot and they didn't move back much.
Yeah, I mean, they moved back 3 picks essentially and picked up all that other haul. So that's just amazing. And then, I don't think they were going to take a quarterback this entire time. Some people said, they don't really like Tua, so they're going to take, somebody at, whether it's Fields or Lance at 3. And it's like, no, they just spent the 1st round pick on Tua Tagovailoa. And now they have all these other picks. So if Tua doesn't work out, they have the draft capital to take a couple more swings at it and try to get another quarterback, or they can trade those picks to a team like, the Rams just did for Matt Stafford, or, I don't think Deshaun Watson is going to get moved this year because of what's going on. So it could be next year that they could go trade for Deshaun Watson with all these picks. They're giving themselves options, and I think that's the most important thing, and they are so set to make a bunch of moves. It's going to be very interesting what they do over the next couple of years. As a Patriots fan, I am scared of them in the AFC East. Moving on to high school football and some terrible news this last couple of weeks, really, out of Duxbury, as the head coach of the football team, Dave Maimaron, was fired because the team was using anti-Semitic terminology for their cadence and for their audibles. And Brennan, you're a coach, so I'm going to let you go on this one. But to me, this is just stupid. Like, how stupid are you to allow this to happen?
Yeah, I was really shocked to see this, and I was just disgusted automatically just to hear this. And I'm getting really sick of this hate and this anti-Semitic hate that's been going on, and even this Asian hate that's been going on recently. It's been disgusting and needs to stop. But this is just adding on to it, and it's just kind of coming out, and we're getting to see it, but we're getting to thin these people out, which is also, I guess, kind of a good thing, because he was fired for it and he deserved to be. You don't deserve to be a leader of young men, especially developing young men, when you're going to try to teach them stuff like that. And you can't just say it was like a one-time thing. There was multiple words that they were using. And I honestly don't want to do it. I don't want to say them, but if people want to go into, shout out to the Boston Herald and the Boston Globe for the articles that were done on this. You can go and they have all the words that he was using, but they were all anti-Semitic hate that this guy was using. And to say that, I needed that as an audible to keep the other team like true, because he didn't want to use audibles that like had an L or an R in them, is just an absurd, basically. And because there's so many words that you can use as a coach for different audibles than using something that has that type of attachment to it or has hate attached to it. I mean, everybody knows some of these words that this guy was using is attached to World War II and hate and the massacre of people. And I'm just shocked that this guy, it's gone on for years. So I'm shocked that Duxbury let it go on for this long. And then part of me is not shocked, to be honest, because at one point I coached at Plymouth North, which is in the same league as them. I was a basketball coach there. And honestly, when I went into the gym, it wasn't very much a good welcome. It really wasn't a good welcome. It was so good to beat them there. We beat them there, and then in overtime, they beat us at home. So it was a 1-1 matchup. But it really was one of those schools where you went as a minority, you really didn't feel welcome. And maybe I'll get some blowback for that. But honestly, that's how I felt going into that gym. So then when I did read this story, part of me wasn't shocked at all. It wasn't shocked at all. But I was shocked that some adults and some smart people would let this go on for this long. And it seemed like winning. It was a winning at all costs because he was a successful coach. He's won 5 Super Bowls since 2005, which is a very successful campaign like, cheers to him, but you don't need to use words of hate to be a successful football coach. So it's just one of those things where I'm glad to see him get fired. I hope he never gets hired as a head coach again. I honestly hope he never gets hired as a football coach again, or a coach in general. He needs to get fired from his special needs job. Can you imagine this guy is a special needs teacher in the school? Okay, and there's another thing. There's another gripe I have with some of these schools. They will do anything to get the football coach in the building, so they'll hire him as a special needs teacher, something that he's probably not qualified for at all, right? So it's disgusting that those special needs kids weren't getting the proper help that they deserved. And then this guy's spewing all this hate on the football field and having a little a hate camp that he's just building over there at Duxbury, the Duxbury Dragons in Massachusetts, for everybody that's watching. And so it's just a really disgusting topic. And like I said, if he gets hired again on another staff, it will just show how coaching is the good old boys club. And a lot of this is coaching and officials is a good old boys club where they'll hire their friends. Come on in. We got a job for you. You got a job on my staff. Even if you're not qualified, or if you're like this guy, you should be disqualified in this guy's case. He should never coach again.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea what kind of teacher he is. I'm not going to make comment on what he does in the class. He could be a great teacher. Who knows? It doesn't sound like it, but who knows? But as the head football coach, number one, Duxbury has and not that this is the most important thing, but they have like you mentioned, there's success on the football field, basketball court. They've put kids in college that have played sports. They had a really good receiver, and I can't remember the kid's name for the life of me, who also played basketball. He went to Harvard and played football at Harvard a few years ago. I wish I could remember the kid's name. He was really good. He's a big 6'4" receiver. But they've had success. And they've done a great job. And Duxbury's a beautiful town. And it's all, and then you have this. And it's like, not only do you have this on a high school campus, you have this right now in 2021, after everything this country's been through over the past year. Not that should have, said, put up the signals that this is the wrong thing to do. But even after everything we've been through the past 365 days, and you still use this as your cadence and as your audibles and as the terminology you use on the football field, like it's, again, like I said, it's just dumb. Even if you feel that way about, even if you believe in anti-Semitism, which you're an idiot to begin with, but then why would you do that where 50 kids on the football team know what that is, and then your opponents hear it, and then like it's just idiotic. I don't understand why they kept doing that, and it's just wrong. It's disgusting. It's dumb. I mean, this is just a dumb thing that should have stopped. If you weren't paying attention to what was going on in the news this past year, and you're still doing this stuff, you're just an idiot. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I mean, we could have put this on the show last week because, for our viewers out there, this story broke last Wednesday. And like I said, shout out to the Boston Globe and the Boston Herald for breaking the news.
Yeah, Danny Ventura and Matt Feld from the Herald did a lot of work reporting this story. And Shaughnessy had a good call about it as well.
Yeah, shout out to Dan Shaughnessy called for him to be fired. And so I think that was a really good call, really good article that he wrote for the Boston Globe. So shout out to them for dropping this news. So we could have had it on the show last week, but honestly, it was one of those things where I kind of knew the fallout was yet to happen. It was still going to fall out over the week. So I knew it would be better to have on the show this week, and the fallout's still happening. So they had their last 2 football games canceled, and they had their game this week canceled. And honestly, for everybody that knows, with the shortened spring season, there's only a few games left. So it looks like their season is pretty much getting canceled out shortly, you know what I mean? And just short week by week, instead of just saying we're going to cancel the whole season, the superintendent is kind of just waiting and canceling the games as they go. But it looks like their whole season is going to get eliminated. So it's one of those things where if you're leading these young men, and especially these seniors now, you've now cost them their whole season. And it's one of those things where he should have been, he's a grown man. He's a grown man. He knows better. And to be using those words is just disgusting in any year, but especially in 2020 and 2021. And because this has been going on for years. The report said this has been going on for years. And so I feel really bad there had to be a Jewish player on his team, and there had to be Jewish players on the other teams that he played. And like I said, cheers to Plymouth North for reporting him to the MIAA and for reporting him out and getting this news out there, because we needed one of the opponents to be able to actually step up and say something, being like, this is wrong, because clearly the people at Duxbury were just letting it happen and go on, which it's, like I said, very disgusting story. And in my opinion, he doesn't deserve to coach again. Moving on, the NCAA tournament, much better topic here to talk about, and that's college basketball and March Madness and coming down to the Final Four now. And it's been an amazing tournament, especially with it all happening in one city.
Yeah, it's been awesome. After not having it last year, just watching it this year, you're just seeing what you missed. For a couple of weeks last year, one of the events that everybody, even people who don't watch college basketball or watch basketball at all, they're in office pools and people are watching the games. And the first day when there's a million games on, it's just an awesome event for everybody to get involved in. If you went to one of the schools, you're paying attention, even if you don't like sports. And I think the biggest question right now is, now that we're into the Final Four, first of all, UCLA, Michigan last night was awesome. I mean, it was a low-scoring game, but you have the 11 seed, you have Michigan, who was a 1 seed, who's been really good all year. Just to see that game, that was unbelievable. And I can't believe UCLA is in the Final Four. That's crazy. Not that the school hasn't been there, because they've been there a lot, but they haven't been there since, I think, 2004, when Kevin Love and Russell Westbrook were there. So, it's been a while for them, and good to see them get back in there. But I think the biggest question now is, who can beat Gonzaga, because Gonzaga looks so good right now. They just look. They played USC, and I thought USC, with the Mobley brothers and some size, might give Gonzaga some trouble, because Gonzaga's not huge. Timmy's in the inside there, and he's a very skilled player. He's not really a big, massive player, and Gonzaga had no problem with USC. I mean, it was like they controlled the game throughout. So I don't think they're going to have a hard time with UCLA, but we've said that about other matchups with UCLA. So it's going to be very interesting. But who is going to beat Gonzaga? I think the one team that might be able to do it is Baylor. I think Baylor has enough firepower at the perimeter to really do something against Gonzaga, because you saw a team that had some size in USC have a tough time with Gonzaga. The way that they get up and down the floor and score in bunches is what makes them so good. But if you have guards on the opposing team that can knock down open shots, but also create havoc in the backcourt when they're on defense, create some turnovers. I think that's the way that you beat Gonzaga, is to knock down threes and create turnovers in the defensive end. We haven't really seen that yet. Gonzaga does a good job taking care of the ball, and they score so well that it's tough for teams to keep up. But I think Baylor, out of the 4 teams left, out of Baylor, Houston, and UCLA, I think Baylor is the one that has a chance to possibly beat Gonzaga. I'm still putting my money on Gonzaga, but Baylor could be the one.
Smart man, putting your money on Gonzaga. I wish I had my bracket here, because I had picked Gonzaga from the beginning. I mean, they had such an impressive season to me, and it's like they knocked off. And it's not like they play in an easy conference. They play in a pretty tough conference, especially for basketball. And so, I mean, they just tore through the conference and through the league and through the nation in their season, and just continued it on into the tournament. So I'm not shocked to see them here at this point. But the tournament, first off, has been good. It's been exciting, like I said, for all of it happening at one city and under COVID. I think only one game. They only lost one game so far to COVID protocols, which that's amazing when you have that many games. So shout out to the safety protocols that they were using there. Shout out to the people that it took to get these games done. And shout out to the coaching staffs too, because the coaching staffs with these young men and young women in San Antonio, keeping them all there in that one city. I'm sure some of them were getting bored, to be honest. So it was really, they did a really good job of, balancing what they can do with young players and honestly balancing trying to get it done and win it all right in the tournament and all that pressure that comes with it. So I think it's been awesome. But I think one of the best parts of the tournament has been that Buddy Boeheim going off for Syracuse, right? And then you got to see the clip of when Melo was there in the tournament and Buddy Boeheim was a little kid. I mean, what an amazing clip to just kind of piece it all together and just showing how, basketball is a family game and a tradition, and especially at Syracuse, how it's just carried on over there. And Jim Boeheim has done such a great job. But to see the coach's kid go out there and just lighten it up in the games, he was knocking down shots and saying, I'm buckets. I'm buckets. If you go back to the replay. And so that was just one of the most exciting parts of the tournament for me. But as far as who can take down Gonzaga, who's left, it's got to be Baylor. I'm wearing the Baylor green. It's honestly the Celtics green as well, but we'll just call it Baylor green for now. One of the last times, because we're going to start using green screens on this show. So, hey, if you like what you're seeing from us, subscribe to this show, give this a like, give this clip a like, because, yeah, we got a lot more stuff coming down the line that we're going to be busting out and even just trying out for fun. But, yeah, I'm wearing that Baylor green because I think if they're the one team that could take Gonzaga down, I think it would be Baylor. They've looked strong in this tournament. They've got a good front court. They've been playing well. And I don't know. I still have to root for Gonzaga, like you said, putting the money on Gonzaga. I think Gonzaga is going to win it in the end. Yeah,
I mean, they're just so fun to watch, too. That's the other thing is I love watching Jalen Suggs. He's going to probably be a top 5 pick in the draft. He was a 2-sport athlete in high school in Minnesota. Also a really great high school football player. There's actually a cool picture on Twitter, too, of him and Paige, I always forget her last name, from UConn, together. You know, because I think they went to the same high school. They're both from Minnesota. 2 of the top athletes in high school, you know, across the country. Paige Becker, I think is her name.
Paige Bucher, I believe it is. I don't want to murder. I think we might have both.
I don't want to mess up her name. She's just what player of the year, too. So I can't believe I can't remember her last name.
I believe.
Yeah, thank you for correcting me. But, yeah, that was a cool picture to see as well. So, yeah, Gonzaga is fun to root for, too. They're just one of those teams. So, yeah, I think it's going to be tough for anybody to stop them. But the other thing that we got going on in the NCAA tournament, or that we've seen over the last couple of weeks, is our next topic, and that's how well the Pac-12 has done in the NCAA tournament. UCLA's been at the top. They're the 11th seed. They were a play-in team that came in and upset a bunch of teams. But then you also have Oregon State, who got to the Elite Eight, USC, who got to the Elite Eight, and then Oregon got to the Sweet 16. So you have all these Pac-12 teams. Nobody was talking about the Pac-12 coming into the tournament. You know, the ACC is usually the best college basketball conference. They weren't this year. You saw, you know, UNC got bounced early. Duke didn't make the tournament. You know, Clemson wasn't that great this year. You know, Wake Forest hasn't been good in a few years now. So now you have, you know, the Big Ten was really the conference this year that everybody thought was going to dominate. And then all of a sudden here comes the Pac-12 and they swallow up the tournament with all these teams that weren't the highest seeds, but had some upsets that coming down through the tournament. And it's just unbelievable. I think they had a record 8 upsets that throughout the tournament for the Pac-12 conference. So just pretty amazing that even though they weren't thought of highly coming into the tournament, how well they've done in that conference.
Pac-12, a traditionally football strong conference, coming out and showing some of their basketball might. And I mean, it doesn't shock me. We're talking about Division I athletes that can tear it up at some of these Power 5 schools. So and they're bringing their game. They want that win. They're bringing that March Madness because they want that tournament win. That tournament win changes everything for not only you and your team, but for your school as well. So I think it's one of those things where the Pac-12 just came ready to play this tournament. And it doesn't shock me, but I guess for some of these viewers, especially if you're an East Coast viewer, you might not get a chance to watch some of these Pac-12 teams because they come on such at late night and late times for us East Coast people. So I know when I was my younger days and I stayed up a little bit later and, you know, I was a night owl, I would watch Pac-12 basketball all the time. Because, I mean, some of the times the games don't even start until like 11 o'clock Eastern time. So it's like one of those things where you got to stay up late to watch some of these guys. So if you're a basketball guy like me or just a sports guy, you're not surprised by seeing the Pac-12. But for somebody that maybe is just an average viewer, doesn't get a chance to see some of these Pac-12 teams, they are probably surprised. But, you know, another thing is, hey, don't be shocked by UCLA. Me and you talked about it before the show. This is a basketball school. They've got so many titles up there. They are known for basketball. I mean, let's just talk about the history there. So it's one of those things where I'm glad to see them back in the Final Four and representing the Pac-12.
Yeah, after not seeing the traditional blue bloods of the Kentuckys and the Dukes and the North Carolinas and some of the other schools that normally make it towards the end of the tournament, to see a UCLA in there is still pretty cool. I mean, as much as I love seeing Gonzaga in there, they're a smaller school, even though they've you talk about Gonzaga playing in a solid basketball conference despite it not being, a major, one of the Power 5 conferences. They've really lifted up their basketball conference because of how good they've been over the past, 2 decades, really. But it's cool to see a UCLA in there. And just seeing their uniforms. I remember when, in the 90s when they won with the O'Bannon brothers and Tyus Edney and all those guys. So that was fun to watch back then, and it's cool to see them back there. And just to look at, some of the upsets that UCLA has had. They've beat BYU, who was a 6 seed. They beat Alabama, who I believe was a 3 seed, if not a 2 seed. And they beat Michigan, who was the 1 seed in their bracket. So to look at all the teams that they ripped through. I know they played Abilene Christian, I think, in the second round and to get to the Sweet 16. They were a 14 seed. UCLA was 11, so people expected them to beat Abilene Christian. But the other 3 teams, nobody expected them to win those games. So it's just been a heck of a run for UCLA and the Pac-12 overall. It's just been fun to see these schools. And I know a lot of people thought Oregon was going to make a nice little run, too. They did get to the Sweet 16. So just interesting to see how far these schools can get out of the Pac-12. And I think the other thing is sometimes when you play in a really good conference throughout the regular season, you kind of beat up on each other, so your records don't necessarily indicate how good you are, and even some of your stats throughout the year don't indicate how good you are. But after going through sort of a gauntlet of a schedule at a tough conference like the Pac-12 did this year, you're kind of tournament ready. And everybody keeps saying that UCLA especially has really just been tournament ready from the jump, and that's what you're seeing right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like you said, tournament ready, and the Pac-12 teams came ready to play. But it's one of those things where I don't think any of them are going to be able to beat Gonzaga. And here's the stat I got for you. And, hey, Coach Duarte, I know Coach Duarte was talking about he couldn't pick Gonzaga, didn't want to, didn't like Gonzaga. Well, guess what? Gonzaga has become the first Division I men's basketball team to win 30-plus games over 5 seasons. So it's never been done. As a Division I team, won 30-plus games over 5 seasons. So this Gonzaga team, like you said, over this last decade and 2 decades has been so dominant that they're now breaking records with it, and this team especially, because they're undefeated in what they're doing. So it's one of those things where the Pac-12, they're going to have to bring it strong. The Pac-12, they're going to have to bring it strong because it's one of those things where I think Gonzaga is coming to play just as much as they did. Moving on. Hey, I'm wearing this green for a reason. Like the Celtics. I don't know. I didn't like what Fournier did the other night. Not going to lie. Just going to get that out there right away. A little disappointed with what we got, but let's talk about the Evan Fornier trade.
Yeah, absolutely. He went 0 for 10 in his first game. So, and you expect the guy to have a tough time. It's tough to just jump right into a team like that, especially when Jaylen Brown wasn't there. You're almost looked at as like the second leading scorer on the team, or a third if you count Kemba Walker as the second when he was playing the other night against the Pelicans. I like Fournier as a fit for the Celtics. He's another guy with a little bit of size on the wing. He's a good scorer. Scores about 19 points a game. Shoots at about 38% from 3, which is really solid. So it just gives you another wing who could shoot threes, brings you some size. Not a great defender, but big enough and long enough to do something on the perimeter on defense. So I think he definitely helps the Celtics team. The thing that a lot of people are talking about right now, everybody wanted the Celtics to make a big move at the trade deadline. I just kind of didn't see what that was going to be. I know a lot of people wanted Vucevic. I get it. Vucevic is a really good player. I don't know how that was going to happen without them trading a Marcus Smart and maybe somebody else to make room for Vucevic to come in because he makes over $20 million under the salary cap. Fournier makes $17 million. So you used that $17 million of that $28 million trade exception to get Fournier. So next in the offseason, if Fournier leaves, you get back the $17 million of the trade exception. The problem is you can't, because you still have 11 left over. You now can't combine the 11 that's left over and the 17 that Fournier's departure might create. So you can't just package those together and go get a $28 million player. Now you can take Fournier's trade exception if he leaves, and then add, a Smart, or they might trade Kemba Walker. I mean, we'll see what happens. In the offseason, a lot of things can change. Or they might trade somebody else from the team that makes some cap space. Maybe they can trade Tristan Thompson. He makes $9 million a year. He's got one more year left on his deal, so they can still combine some players with the $17 million, make a trade, but it makes it a little harder because you don't have that full 28. Then on top of that, if you do like Fournier, you re-sign him and extend him in where he can make $15 to $20 million a year. But do you really want to spend that much money on Evan Fornier, even if you really like him, even though he's a good player, funny on Twitter, certainly a guy that can play basketball. His scoring average has gone up every year. He can shoot. Like I said, he's 6'7". But do you really want to give that guy that kind of money? And it's just, you wonder if the Celtics have painted themselves into a corner making this move.
I think it's one of those things where, like you said, Evan Fornier is a solid NBA player, a legit NBA player. But when I found out that he was making $17 million a year, I was shocked. He's not worth that much money. And I think it's one of those things where we kind of got Orlando's bad contract. They invested in a player that is not worth that much money, and now they try to ship him out, and they find somebody that's willing to take him. And the Celtics needed to make a move. Don't get me wrong. They needed to make a move. And I do feel like this helps our team. But like I texted you immediately, I texted you and said, this is not a contender. He doesn't help us become a contender. We're not going to win the title with this guy. So really, why did we make this trade? Was this just so like Danny could tell people he made a trade? I would have rather kept that $28 million exception and try to use it all together. But I guess the only thing is that we didn't give up much. We gave up a couple of draft picks, which even, hey, go back a couple of topics on this show. And I said, draft picks are 50-50. You never know what you're going to get with them. And then, and then you might get this trade exception back with the $17 million at least if he does leave. So it's like we didn't give up much, but we didn't gain much either. So it's really one of those things where like you said, I think we're kind of painted into a corner where we're not really getting much done. I don't think this helped us out. And when we're talking about a Celtics team, we have to be talking about winning championships. We have to be talking about winning titles. And people can say New England fans are, we're spoiled all we want. We're talking about the Boston Celtics, the most winning franchise in NBA history. So we're not going to just accept like finishing last in the division or not making the playoffs or getting bounced out first in the playoffs. We need to be getting to conference championships, and we need to be fighting for championships. That's the only thing that's acceptable with the Boston Celtics. And so we need to be starting to make moves for that. We needed a big man. Unfortunately, Andre Drummond goes to the Lakers. Then they're talking about, I think, Aldridge going to the Nets. It's just one of those things where we needed a big man, and I would have liked to seen them get one of those two guys. Even though they're an aging player, I just think they could have helped out more than an Evan Fornier, who, in my opinion, should be making $7 to $10 million a year. This goes even more to the fact about, hey, supply and demand and how the game's inflated and how pro sports are inflated when you got a guy like Evan Fornier making $17 million a year.
Yeah, I think the one good thing is, the Celtics did leave themselves some options at the end of the year where, this is the last year of his contract. So if they don't like Fournier, they can just walk away from him. And again, they get that $17 million trade exception back. So they do have some options. One of the best things they probably did at the trade deadline, even though I like Daniel Tice a lot, is they did trade Daniel Tice. It gives Robert Williams some more time to play. Tice is the perfect backup center. He's a guy that, does everything the coaching staff asks him to do. He always seems to get drilled playing these games, and he never gets calls. And, sometimes I want him to get more angry. But, he's a really good backup center. I don't think he's a starting center unless he's a starting center on the Brooklyn Nets. So it sucks that you have to lose that guy. He's a free agent at the end of the year, so you made that move to get Fournier. You also got rid of Jeff Teague. Now, I thought it was a good signing when they signed him in the offseason. They needed a backup point guard that had veteran experience. But then once you started the season, Peyton Pritchard was playing well as a rookie, and then you got Kemba back. Now there's nowhere for Jeff Teague to go. There was a log jam on the perimeter with the Celtics. There still is, because Romeo Langford came back tonight, I think. So, you still got a ton of perimeter players that either need a lot of playing time and aren't getting it, or get a lot of playing time and they're not of any use to the Celtics. So to get rid of Teague, I think, was important. But, yeah, the Fournier trade, it makes them better, like we've been saying, but it doesn't make them a contender. It is interesting if they really like him, and he tends to gel well with, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. then maybe it makes it easier to trade Kemba Walker in the offseason. So you have your third scorer in Fournier. Then maybe you can go after somebody else to see if they fit. Then maybe that's the final piece of the puzzle. We'll see what happens. I'm glad they didn't do nothing, but again, this wasn't the big move that everybody wanted. But on to our next topic, and it's coming up fast. I can't believe. I remember last year during the pandemic, we found out that, things started to get canceled. Right here in Boston, the Boston Marathon got moved. And then we saw, the NBA season came to a halt. Baseball season got pushed ahead. The NFL draft was remote. And then we saw that the Olympics were moved from last year to 2021 this year. And it's coming up fast. It's in a couple of months. It starts July 23rd out in Tokyo, Japan. And Brandon, you were hearing that they were thinking about Tokyo, or Japan rather, was thinking about punting and not having the Olympics this year. They're already not having, they're banning foreign spectators. So, it's great that we're going to have the Olympics. We just mentioned how it's great to have the NCAA tournament again, but there's still some COVID protocols and issues down the line that are still going to need to be worked out for this year's Olympics.
Yeah, first off, I love the Olympics. I'm a track and field guy. This is the main time for track and field, beyond watching like a diamond event or maybe like a world championship event. The Olympics is really where it's at for the track and field and for every other sport. I mean, we're talking about the best athletes in the world representing their countries. So first off, I love the Olympics. And hey, second off, I was big shocked when it got canceled. It was the right move during COVID. It was the right move to move it. But we're talking about these athletes that have prepared, some of them all their life for that moment. And then a lot of them, obviously, over these last 4 years have just been dedicating their life nonstop. First off, to being able to qualify for their team, and then second off, getting ready for the Olympics, and then it got canceled and moved on them to 2021. But I'm glad that it's happening this year. I'm super excited for it. I'm amped up. This was definitely a topic I wanted to talk about. And yeah, it was out there that Tokyo was trying to punt the games and trying to get rid of the games and just trying to say, hey, to the Olympic Committee, can you kind of put us back in the pool to maybe get the Olympics maybe 8 to 10 years down the line when there's no COVID, obviously. And the Olympic Committee said, no, we cannot do that. Either you have the Olympic Games now, or we're going to punt you down the line a good 30 or 40 years. And so it was one of those things where then Tokyo said, all right, well, we'll have the games at this point, which it makes sense because obviously they've invested a lot of money into these venues and a lot of money for the venues for the athletes. And the greatest thing I like about the Olympics is you can use these venues for the public later on, and they kind of melt into public access, which is amazing for the Olympics. But yeah, it's one of those things where I think a lot of us that love the Olympics are super excited. And when you talk about the Olympics, the Summer Olympics is where it's at. I know we've got the Winter Olympics, a little bit of a bore, in my opinion. I like watching the hockey, and I like watching, some of the ski jumps. But beyond that, and I'm sorry, the shooting is kind of cool. But beyond that, I don't know. It's kind of boring. But the Summer Olympics, pretty much every event, everything that you watch is exciting, from beach volleyball to tennis to golf. Obviously, you got basketball in there. You've got track and field. There's just so many amazing events. You've got marathon. You've got biking. I'm amped, if you can't tell. I am ready for the Olympics. I love Japan. I love Tokyo. I talked about it before the show with you about how I'd love to visit Tokyo and I'd love to visit Japan. So I think this is going to be an amazing games that they're going to put on. But I think it is going to be limited with COVID. Obviously, athletes are going to have to follow certain rules, and they're definitely going to have to stay masked up. And I'm hoping that the United States team can stay extra cautious and extra safe and keep all of our athletes safe so we can go ahead and do what we normally do in the Olympics, which is get the W's and get gold medals. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it's going to play out under COVID. But yeah, I'm just excited. And I want to give a shout out to when the, 1994, the Atlantic Games in the United States, and how I was excited as a kid. I was only in 4th grade, but we had the games here on the American soil. And that's just how much it means to certain people, the Olympics. And so I'm really excited to see it coming.
Yeah, I love the Summer Olympics too. I like them more than the winter. I'm not a winter sports guy. I don't ski or anything like that. So, I mean, I still like watching the Winter Olympics. Those are a lot of fun too. But summer is my favorite too. The swimming is a lot of fun to watch too. I like watching the swimming races, and track and field's awesome and stuff. So it's going to be great just to see we've been so isolated, and then on top, as stuff starts to come back, we're doing a lot of stuff here in America with sports. But it will be cool to see an international sporting event. We've all talked about, COVID and how it's affecting this country and how it's affecting that country, and who from this country came here and who from this country. And it'll be nice just to kind of have an international athletic competition. COVID's still going to be in everybody's minds. Hopefully, a lot of the U.S. athletes are already going to be vaccinated at that point. It's looking like they could be. So that'll be great, and then they won't have to worry about getting sick or anything when they're over there. But they're still going to have COVID protocols, and there's still going to be things that they have to go through. I understand why Tokyo is concerned about having the Olympics, both as a government and then as the Olympic Committee in Japan. I totally understand that. But if you give up the Olympics, there's cities and countries that are lining up. It's like being on the wait list for Patriots season tickets. Like, it's going to take 2 decades for you to try to get the next Olympics. There's generations that are trying to get the Olympics. It's every 4 years. So, you're not going to get the Olympics again in 8 years. That's crazy. So, I think it makes all the sense in the world to just keep it here. They already made plans for it. You just had to wait another year. I know there's so many things and logistics that have to be worked out, but it makes total sense to keep it in Tokyo. And I hope it goes well, because it's always awesome to watch the Olympics.
Yeah, I think one of the things, like you talked about, that we definitely have to watch about going forward is, are they going to be banning spectators? Are they not going to be allowing spectators from other countries to even enter the country and to be able to see the Olympics? You're talking about family members. You're talking about maybe private coaches that are going along with some of these athletes. You're talking about just regular fans, like I said, that love the Olympics. So it's one of those things where I get it. As a country, they want to limit who comes in their country right now under COVID. But I think it's one of those things right now where if you are the host of the Olympic Games, you have to let these people come. You have to let these spectators come, and you just have to do it safe. You have to do it safe. You have to mask up. You have to still do the social distancing where you can, and you just have to do it as safe as possible. But I don't know. It's just something I think we're probably going to cover as soon as we get closer to the Olympic Games, because we're going to have more to talk about it. But moving on to, what is it? Tomorrow, opening day for baseball, right? And it's just right around the corner. I know, obviously, here in Boston, people are ready for the Boston Red Sox. And they were making adjustments to the stadium during COVID, where they talked about selling groups of tickets and pods. And they are going to have certain seats zip tied off just to make sure that they're separating people out. But, yeah, baseball is coming back, and it's coming back with fans, which is very exciting.
Yeah, no question. I mean, that was another, we just mentioned, missing the Olympics last year and missing the NCAA tournament. And then opening day for baseball was another thing that we totally missed because of what happened with the pandemic. And, even though it's outside and I think this year it's going to go much smoother. We all kind of know what we're doing now as far as being safe. The stadiums know what they're doing. The stadium employees know what they're doing. And it's just going to be great tomorrow to see baseball outside, baseball events again, with at least some fans in the stands this upcoming season. And I can see them expanding, the amount of fans that can be in the stadium when you go from, say, 25% capacity to 50 and so forth. So that's certainly great to see that for baseball. And, a lot of teams made a lot of moves in the offseason. One team that could really contend for a World Series this year, too, is San Diego Padres and all the moves they made. They locked up Fernando Tatis, their shortstop, who's awesome. I mean, he's going to be a superstar for a decade. But they also made some moves for Blake Snell, who was great in the postseason last year. If his coach didn't take him out, if Brian Cash, his manager didn't take him out too early, you could be seeing the Rays, winning the World Series, or at least winning a couple of World Series games against the Dodgers. Yu Darvish, they made a trade for Yu Darvish. They're going to have a really good rotation. They already have a good lineup. So the Padres are going to be fun to watch this year, a team that, is starting to creep back up into being a good baseball team after having a tough time for a few years there. The Dodgers are going to be good again. In the AL, the Yankees are going to be good again. It looks like the White Sox could have a good year this year. We'll see what happens. But, yeah, I don't want the Yankees to do well, but their rotation's looking pretty good. So we'll see what happens. But, yeah, it's just going to be great to have baseball again this year. And also the Mets made some moves, too. They picked up Francisco Lindor, one of the best shortstops in baseball. So, you have these teams that are making moves. I'm not super optimistic about the Red Sox this year. Their rotation does not look great. We're going to talk about them a little bit in the next topic. But it's just great to have baseball back. I think it's going to be a lot of fun tomorrow on opening day.
Yeah, I'm probably going to get hammered but for saying this by some viewers, but I'm not really a baseball fan. I mean, I watch it. I do like it, especially during the summer when it's on. I guess the biggest part for me is going to a game live. That's when you really get to watch baseball and enjoy baseball, is in one of those major league stadiums and, going to Boston on Lansdowne Street and getting yourself a sausage and peppers is just amazing. So if any of you viewers haven't done that, I recommend that. And because that's really the part of the game that I love for baseball. And obviously it's the signal of great weather coming back. And that's huge as well. So I'm really excited about that. And obviously, like I said, I cover the Boston Red Sox a little bit and watch what they do. But for me, it's more exciting, like I said, when you get to watch the game live, just like any other sport and professional sport. Going to Boston and going to Fenway Park is an amazing thing. But I've also seen a game at Shea Stadium, which was just amazing. It's right near the airport, and there's planes flying over, and, man, just a loud stadium, and you get that New York feel. So I think that's, like I said, that's what I love about baseball the most, is being in the stadium, drinking yourself a nice beer, having yourself a sausage and peppers, feeling the fans, and hopefully they'll be able to get that back this year. I think they're saying they're going to be doing a 12 to 25% capacity. And hopefully as more people get vaccinated, we'll be getting more fans and more fans in the stadiums. Because to me, like I said, that's exciting. That's what really makes baseball great in that time of year, and just enjoying summer in America. And what is more America about summer than really baseball, right? Until football comes, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you there, buddy.
And so that's, the boys of summer get to enjoy it until August.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the opening day of baseball is like the start of spring for a lot of people. So that's why everybody loves it so much. If you get a sausage outside of Fenway Park, you go to the Sausage King. When you get your sausage and peppers, ask for the peppers on the bottom. That's the way to do it. You get the roll, you put the peppers in first, then you put the sausage on. The sausage weighs down the peppers so the peppers don't fall out of the sub when you start eating it. That's how you get a sausage right outside of Fenway Park. Peppers on the bottom. Make sure you ask for that. But moving on to what's that, buddy?
Comeback Sports approved.
Yes. Maybe we can get the Sausage King on here. He can promote all the sausages for games at Fenway this season. But continuing to our next topic, and we're still sticking with Major League Baseball. We're going to focus in on the Red Sox. They had a COVID scare. Towards the end, I think it was their last spring training day. Matt Barnes was supposed to pitch. He got tested positive for COVID. Then a couple of days later, the Red Sox are saying it's a non-infectious COVID positive. I don't even know what that means. I haven't heard, we've been doing this for a year now, and I still have never heard that, since we've been talking about COVID testing. I have no idea what that is. It sounds like Barnes is okay. Hopefully everybody at the Red Sox is testing negative throughout this last week or so. So it seems like all systems go for the Red Sox for opening day. This has got to be a concern, though, for the Red Sox and for Major League Baseball.
No, unfortunately, this is something that we're going to have to deal with in professional sports for this whole year and maybe next year as well, until we can get more people vaccinated and get to herd immunity and have the pandemic be in the rear view. So we're going to have to deal with this for a while. So it's not shocking to me. And it kind of reminds me of the James Harden situation earlier this year in the NBA, where he tested positive, they thought, during the game, and then they said it was a false positive, and he continued to play during the game. And then after the game, they said it was a positive test, and there was just all this runaround. And that's kind of what happened with this Barnes situation. And it made, I think, 8 or 9 people isolate from the team and from the staff. So it was a big deal, and I was glad to see that they're taking the right protocols and they're taking it the cautious way, separating those people to protect the team and to protect the other players. But it's definitely one of those things where I think we're going to have to experience it, unfortunately, over this next year or two in professional sports, in college sports, and even in high school sports. Just here in Massachusetts, I saw a couple of high school football games that were just canceled because of COVID protocols. So it's just one of those things where during this pandemic, we all have to, hey, get through this together and button down and make sure we're being safe and doing things the right way. Go out and get vaccinated, people. If you want to see sports come back, you want to get back in these stadiums, we want to get out of these COVID protocols and having our players and our families quarantined. Hey, go and get vaccinated so we can get out of this pandemic as quick as possible. But it's one of those things that, yeah, I'm not shocked that it happened, but I'm glad to see that the Red Sox are handling it appropriately.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the biggest thing, too, is you saw with Barnes that all the guys that had to isolate because Barnes had the positive test were pitchers, because the pitchers are all together. A lot of times they're all hanging out in the bullpen, or especially when they're at spring training, they're all doing their own thing away from the hitters. And it's, if a pitcher gets it, there's probably another pitcher that's going to get it. You wonder if a catcher's going to get it. So it's just one of those things where you can see that a specific position group, if one guy gets it, sometimes that spreads. In the NFL, we saw with the Denver Broncos, one of the quarterbacks got it, and then the whole quarterback room had to either quarantine or, there's a chance that they got it. So it's one of those things where, you wonder if they're going to try to separate even pitchers, whether it's, this one relief pitcher, maybe one starter work out together over here. There's one relief pitcher and maybe one starter go over here, and, kind of spread out the relievers and the pitcher and not keep all the relievers together, all the starters together, because that was the other thing. If you're missing, 3 starters and you had a guy just pitch the day before, you're going to have a reliever come up and pitch, probably do a bullpen session, and it just gets so complicated. So I wonder if they will try to split up, the positions that way, keep, maybe not have all the outfielders together, maybe not have all the infielders together all the time, that sort of thing. So it'll be interesting to see what they do there. But we're just going to have to, teams are just going to have to live with this, over the next few months at least until everybody's vaccinated. But it's unfortunately, we're just so used to it now that it's just kind of part of our everyday life, hearing that, we both are involved in high school sports, and just hearing these football games that are getting canceled, which is, it's become the norm in the spring season so far here, especially here in Massachusetts. But all this stuff is normal. This COVID case with Barnes is normal. They're going to have to deal with it at some point during the season. Again, I don't think it'll be as bad as last year. And even last year, when we were in the thick of the pandemic, even over the summer when the numbers went down, but we were still very much in the pandemic, MLB had to shuffle some things around in it, but it wasn't that bad. It wasn't, as far as like having to move games around and how many players were infected, it really wasn't as bad as, it could have gotten. So I think this year, especially knowing more and seeing what they were able to do last year, I think they'll be fine this year. There might be a few little ones here and there, but hopefully they can get the 162 games in. I think that'll be, certainly the goal, and I think it will happen. It just, we're going to have to move some things around probably a little bit here and there. So it'll be just fascinating to watch. It's an unfortunate thing, but it's a thing that we can certainly watch this year during baseball season.
Man, that is a lot of games. I always say that. And, you got NFL players complaining about getting one additional game. And you got these MLB players playing way too many games, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where if they get all of those games in without a COVID situation, I'd be shocked for all the teams. So it's just one of those things where, unfortunately, we're going to have to deal with it going forward right now until we can get out of this pandemic. But even forward, I'm trying to get us a college football coach on here to interview, but also a high school football coach from Massachusetts so we can talk about the COVID protocols from this spring season. And hopefully we'll have one on in the next couple of weeks here. But moving on to our final topic of the night, save the best for last. The King strikes again. Lewis Hamilton wins the Grand Prix in Bahrain, the first Grand Prix of the season, and honestly won it in a car that was technically not the best car on the grid. The Red Bull was best all week. Max Verstappen was number 1 on the charts all week in all the practices, number 1 in qualifying. But then on Sunday, when you got a race for points, that's when it shows up, and the King showed up, and he got it done.
Yeah, just not a shocker. We talked a couple of weeks ago about how, Hamilton's car, he was spinning out, and it wasn't running fast, and they were having a tough time during testing, and it wasn't what they were used to. And then he comes out in the first race of the year and wins it in what is possibly a slower car. Just crazy, and you got to think that the rest of these racing teams and drivers are looking at Lewis Hamilton and they're like, especially the guys at Red Bull, they got a new driver this year and they're probably thinking, this is the year. Hamilton's getting old. We can take advantage of this, right? The car's a little slower. And then all of a sudden, first race of the year, Hamilton's like, nope, I'm going to win anyway. He wins the race. And all those guys are probably like, Red Bull and all the other teams are probably just like, what can we do to dethrone this dude? Because no matter what the conditions are, no matter what the circumstances are, no matter, how his car drives, no matter, it's a short off season because of the pandemic, is this the last season for Lewis Hamilton? It doesn't matter. He still wins the first race of the year. That sends a message to the rest of the F1 racing, all the teams in F1 racing, just to see them. They're probably like, God, what are we going to have to put up with again this year with Lewis Hamilton? Because he's been so good. He's been dominating the sport for so long. He might do it again here in 2021.
Yeah, we're talking about a 7-time world champion that's looking to get 8 world championships and put himself up there alone. Right now, he's tied with the great Michael Schumacher with 7 world titles. If he can win an 8th world title this year, first off, it's going to be one of the toughest years to do it because Max Verstappen and Red Bull are going to be there to fight every step of the way. And they showed it this weekend because Max Verstappen was all over him, actually passed him on track with just laps left, but it unfortunately passed off the track. It was deemed an illegal overtake, and he had to give the position back. And then Lewis just rode it out and got the win, with Max right there trying to steal it. So it's just one of those things where, like you said, I think it was a message sent and message well received to the grid that, hey, the king is still here. You're going to have to knock the king off his throne if you're going to want this title, because he's not ready to go. Kind of like this guy that we're watching here with him, Tom Brady. He's just getting better with age. And Lewis Hamilton is just getting better with age. He's learning how to drive the car better. And experience in F1 is huge. Okay, you know what to do. You know how to overtake. You know what to do when someone's overtaking you. You know how to slipstream properly. It's just one of those things where you can't put enough on experience. And Lewis Hamilton has all the experience needed to go out and go ahead and win another world title this year. And you know what? He's going to have more wins coming up, and we'll be talking about him on this show. Next time, I'm going to be wearing my Mercedes shirt because obviously I'm a big Mercedes fan, big Lewis Hamilton fan, and he's going to be getting more W's this season. But I'm looking forward to the battle between him and Max Verstappen, and I'm waiting to see if Valtteri Bottas, his teammate, can put up a little bit better of a fight. On Sunday, the team kind of put him on the back foot, had a slow pit stop, and that really put him seconds behind. So I'm looking to see in this next Grand Prix happens in Imola in Italy, if we can have 3 cars up there battling for the win, and maybe even possibly a 4th if Sergio Perez can drive his Red Bull up there to the front. But if you're new to F1, I suggest going to Netflix and watching the Drive to Survive series on Netflix. There's 3 seasons, and that'll cut you up to where we currently are in F1, and that'll get you ready for this season, because I really feel like this season is going to be one of the most exciting, if not the most exciting, that we've had in the last decade, and it's going to be a battle to the end. But I'm looking forward to seeing, and my money's on Lewis Hamilton winning his 8th world championship.
Yeah, as much as we love parity in professional sports and new teams coming up, we also love dynasties. We're Patriots fans, so we've seen that. But we also hate it when other teams are dynasties, but we still pay attention. There was always a debate: was the UConn women's basketball dynasty good for the women's sport? It 100% was, because people always wanted to tune in to see greatness. I think that's what's going on in F1 racing. Lewis Hamilton is a superstar. He's kind of set up a dynasty here with the amount of times he's won, just like we just showed before with Tom Brady and some other championship caliber teams. Tim Duncan and the Spurs. Go back to the Celtics of the 60s and 50s, and the 49ers of the 80s. People love tuning in and finding out about these types of dynasties, and Lewis Hamilton is one of those dynasties in F1 racing. And it's going to be a lot of fun, like you said, to watch the rest of this season. And Hamilton sending a big message in week 1 to the rest of the F1 crew about who's still the man on the F1 racing circuit. it's certainly still Lewis Hamilton, no matter what car he's driving. If he was driving a little Tykes car, I feel like he'd still win one of those F1 races. So it's going to be fun to watch. But folks, that's going to do it for our 10 topics this week on Comeback Sports. Again, if you want to follow us on Twitter, right here at the bottom of the screen is my Twitter handle, Coach Perry's Twitter handle. You can also subscribe, and make sure you subscribe to Comeback Sports on YouTube. You'll get updates. Our phenomenal producer, Ben Kudo, has been cutting up all the different topics into individual videos throughout the week. We're getting a lot of hits on some of these videos, so make sure you check those out as well. Some of the stuff we talked about earlier in the winter that's now coming through to fruition in the NFL draft, NFL free agency, the NCAA tournament, the NBA. A lot of this stuff is now kind of showing up. So it's fun to kind of see what we talked about before and now what we're talking about now. So make sure you check all that stuff out, and make sure you continue to subscribe and watch Comeback Sports, folks. We want to thank you so much for joining us this week. We'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.